Hello there. I am going to be doing a small video today that is going to be a mixture of my art process that you'll be watching and just my thoughts about nowadays being an artist and my experience in not knowing what I'm doing. First, on the painting that I will be doing today, I wanted to try a different style than my usual art. I've been seeing a lot of artists with more painterly and fleshed out artwork, and I kind of wanted to try my own hand at it and kind of see where I could go with my own art and see if I could push myself, painting a little bit more realistically. So I'm using my main character from my webtoon, Ava, and I'm just laying out a sketch right now to kind of flesh out a foundation. I usually work a little bit longer on sketches than I did on this one, and the line art as well, because it's a lot more important usually and shows up more in my usual art. But with this one, I knew I would be painting over it anyways, so I just kind of gave myself a little bit of leeway of it not being perfect or anything with the line art or anything. With this drawing also, you'll see that there's a lot of change throughout the whole process, and I have been finding that lately, as I become more serious about art and wanting to get better and become a professional and really hone in on my skills, the more vast my ignorance seems to become. And I mean ignorance in the sense of what is out there, like what is truly out there for me to use for the skills to learn to become a better artist. I don't mean to say that I know nothing, but even though I've been drawing for the last 15 years, I am discovering almost an entirely different level of the art world. Shifting from a hobby to pursuing it as a career has brought on so many different shifts, like a shift of mindset and dedication. And it's also brought another level of kind of anxieties and an incredible sense of responsibility towards working hard. Now, with all that in mind, as I pursue artwork after artwork, I've been getting intense feelings of not being enough and not knowing enough. And obviously that also comes with seeing a lot of other artists who are amazing and I look up to and I'm inspired by, and the comparison game is always one that we fight with as artists. I don't think there's any artist out there who doesn't deal with the comparison game, because one, it's everywhere, especially with social media. It's so easy to see things that are perfect and polished and amazing, and then you will hear a lot of people say the pros and the cons of that. And there are a lot of pros. You get a lot of inspiration, you can learn a lot from other people, and then there's cons of like your insecurities are just completely brought up, because how could you possibly ever make something as amazing as this? And I myself have had those difficulties with those kinds of insecurities and thoughts and comparisons, and I'll be the first to admit that has stopped me and blocked me for a good portion of years of pursuing this. Because I was scared of not knowing how or what to make. And I stopped my own growth for several years, scared of the mountain I had to climb to become someone relevant or professional. Like I didn't want to face what that all meant, because when you want to become more, you have to realize that more comes with an intense amount of learning, and that can be really, really scary. And if you don't have the right mindset around that to push you forward despite how big that mountain is, if you don't have that kind of mindset, you can get just so down. And that's what happened to me for several years, actually. There is that mountain, and there is a large amount of things I don't know how to do. And I sit at my desk and I look at my sketchbook and I'm at a loss at how to create anything. And 6 years ago, that thought would stop me from doing anything anyways, like at all. If it was too much, then I didn't want to start, because what's the point of doing anything if I can't know it all right away? I want to know everything. I want to be able to do all the things that are in my head and put them out on paper immediately. And I want to say part of that is kind of the immediate gratification of this day and age and this society that we've kind of made as people, where everything is kind of there at our fingertips so easily. And learning how to work hard and actually put in time is a skill, and it does not come naturally to me. So to want to be someone that does more, to want to be someone who can do more, who knows more, who is a professional in their work, this mountain of like responsibility of needing to know more, it's something I have to climb because that's what I want. So as an artist, I think back a few years ago when those thoughts would have stopped me, because I had such a weak mindset around what I wanted and what I wanted to learn. And I also was so scared of failing. I was so scared of it not being good enough immediately that it just stopped me. But now it only intimidates me, but it doesn't stop me anymore. And I'm not a professional, and I have, I know the foundations, but I'm still building the walls and the roof of my art skills, and I'm, getting them up there. But I would say that's what makes me an artist now. I still get frustrated, obviously. There's going to be times where my perfectionism comes out and I'm like, why is this not coming out like it is in my brain? But I've come to realize that there is so much to learn, and that can be overwhelming. So I need to slow down and just take it one skill at a time. For example, the illustration you're watching, I was challenging myself to not only render differently, do a completely different style, but to push myself with color a lot and contrast, because that's something I've been trying to work on more and to really do better at. And let me tell you, I know the basics of color theory, but actual practical use of it is still so foreign to me. And a lot of this drawing was just, messing around and shoving colors around. But I will say, the actual act of doing it and putting it out there, even though it's scary to even try, because what if I spend all this time and it still looks like crap? And I think that's where most of my fears come from, is that I'm just wasting time. But let me tell you, getting through this illustration, this drawing, didn't like it for most of it until the last 3 minutes of the drawing, where I was like, oh, this actually turned out okay. But that's because I kept going and I fought against those fears and realized every drawing I make, every illustration is just one step closer to knowing and being a better artist. Of course, there are things that I still need to work on. In hindsight, I think I should have done some thumbnail sketches before, because the actual composition of this piece, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's definitely lacking in a lot of things. But I think that's the beauty of continuously learning. now I have more color skill and experience in my belt. And there's this new knowledge now of the importance of thumbnailing. I mean, I sort of already knew that, but it sure does like hammer it in when you actually do it and then you forget and then you do it again and you forget and you're like, I gotta remember that next time. But every time we make art, we get closer to being better. And that is literally it. You do have to practice in a way that's pushing you forward. And I've heard so many times that you can draw for hours and not learn anything or not grow any skills unless you are actually actively practicing in a way that makes you think about what you're doing. And if you're doing that kind of practicing, you can learn so much even in just 20 minutes. Actively watching the world around you, being present while you work. Notice the things that you are weak in and take time to strengthen those parts. That's how practicing should be, and that's how we get better in a short amount of time, is by actively being there while we're drawing. As I draw, I may not know exactly what I'm doing or have all the knowledge I wish I had, but when I actually put paper to pen, when I put pen to paper, or tablet in this case, and commit to drawing, I know I will learn more. You cannot just wait for knowledge to pop into your brain. You must actively search for it. Obviously, you need to also study from others and the masters and strengthen your skills by being taught, but I also find that there's a lot to learn by observing your own work and experimenting in your own work and doing whatever you can to do it this way this time and do it that way another time, and seeing what works for you. You can learn a lot about art and yourself in that kind of practice. One way that I learned that I think is kind of a fun practice is by taking one person or several people's arts, studying their brush strokes, their color schemes, the process of what they do, how they get their compositions, the way they get them, the different value systems that they use. I study that for a really good portion of time, almost memorizing it. And then I put it all away. I don't look at their art while I'm making my own. And I go to my own work and I translate that newfound knowledge into my own interpretation. I'll draw something with the memory of what I learned and make it my own. And sometimes I'll go back to the other artist's work and I'm like, oh, I did that very differently. I thought I was doing exactly what they were doing, but I was doing it in my own way. And that's what practice does. It enhances your observation skills and it pushes you to really think about what you're seeing and then what you're drawing. I wish I could say that there is a perfect way to become perfect immediately, to know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, how to paint a certain way, how to get the structures down in a certain way that you see your favorite artists, but unfortunately, and also unfortunately for me, that's not how it works. And I've also been realizing that although I want to be perfect, I'm far from it, and I have a long way to go before I will probably ever feel like I'm ready to be a professional. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of artists have, is never really feeling like their work is actually where they want it to be. There's always something more to want to learn. And I think that's okay. I mean, we are human. That's kind of the process of being human in anything we do, is that search for becoming better, that search for perfection. I will say it's hard when perfectionism comes in and takes a spot in your heart and kind of takes over for a little bit, because it does seem to, from what I've seen, it does cause a lot of stress for most artists. And if you are struggling with perfectionism, I can only relate my own experiences. I've learned a lot recently after really getting serious about my art again, that I have really welcomed failure. And what that means for me and what that looks like for me is every time I draw, I am totally okay if the drawing turns out like crap. I am really okay with it now, because every time I draw, I get closer to what I want to be. Every time. Without failure, even if it's a crappy drawing, even if it didn't turn out like I wanted to, every time I draw, every time I push myself and try to experiment or do something more, I get closer to who I want to be and what kind of artist I want to be, because you cannot get better without failure. That's just how it works. We learn through the mistakes we make, through the trials that we go through, and I think that goes for anything in life, really. So if you're struggling with perfectionism and feel like you can't make anything perfect, everything is totally wrong, it's all turning to crap every time you draw something, try to remind yourself that those things are actually perfect in their failure, because they are helping you become someone more, someone better, someone who is going to be where you want to be. Because if you just sat there and, like I did for several years, and just said, you know what, I can't be perfect now, and this is all crap, I don't like any of this, so I'm not going to do anything. And I did that for several years, and I regret it, and I wish that my mindset had been different, but I feel like if I had just kept going through those failures, my art would be even better now. So I just have to remind myself, even if things don't turn out exactly like I want them right now, these are stepping stones. These are the things I have to go through to become better. So with this drawing, everything that it accumulated into, even though there was a lot of stuff I was like really unsure about, I was going back and forth about the hair, about the background, about the outfit, everything in my brain was telling me, like, please just give up on this. Like, don't draw this anymore. Let's just go on to the next thing. And if I had kind of continued with those thoughts and stopped, I wouldn't have this video. I wouldn't have this portrait done. And yeah, there's a lot that I can fix on it. There's probably a lot that could have been better. Her posture, her pose, everything about her pose, I really wanted to fix. But the thing is, I also really like the colors in the end. And I'm really proud of myself for continuing to make this drawing, even when it felt like I was not going anywhere with it. And I think I also proved to myself that I can make good portraitures with this kind of rendering style. If I keep pursuing it and if I keep working on it, I know that I'm going to get better than this. So I felt like a failure at the beginning of this video, this drawing, and I kept going. And I want to encourage you, if that's something that you struggle with, where it's just like it feels like a daily pain to make something because it just will not turn out how you want it to, just keep going a little bit longer. Just push on a little bit longer. You will see returns, you will get those skills will enhance every time. And you will see yourself pursuing it more because you're like, oh, you know what? I actually did learn something a little bit more this time. That's kind of what I wanted to share. I hope you've enjoyed this video and my rambling. This is my character from my webtoon, Nova. I'll put the link in below if you would like to go read it. It's pretty new, but any support is welcome. And I just hope that you guys have a really great art journey continuously, and that you welcome failure, and that you learn from your mistakes, and that you just enjoy the process. And yeah, as I am. So, toodaloo. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching.